Sean Murphy's out 4 to 6 weeks with a broken rib. What do the Braves do now? Yes, welcome on in to Braves Today for Tuesday, March 4th. Your source of news, notes, and updates on your Atlanta Braves. I'm your host, Lindsay Crosby. Follow me on Twitter at Crosby Baseball. You can follow the show on Twitter, Braves_today. We have a Facebook page and Instagram as well. And you can find all my written work, bravetoday.com. That's the Braves Today Substack, as this is both a podcast and a newsletter. While you are following things and going out to check things out, go subscribe to Braves on Deck with Tyler Redmond, and go follow him on Twitter at Tyler Redmond TV. He is our guest today, coming to us from Northport, where he happened to be there just in time for some significant breaking news down there in Northport.
Yeah, Sean Murphy out for 4 to 6 weeks. I was in the stands earlier today. I was kind of walking around. I don't like to be confined to just the press box. I like to kind of move around and see all the different parks. Of course, the Braves were on the road with the Rays today. And yeah, I got the news, and it was just like just yet again, we're starting this injury trend. And I did a story. Of course, I have the YouTube. I also work for WRBL Channel 3 in Columbus. So we started our spring training coverage this week. And, you got to start where you left off. And you left off with a season that was just historically unfortunate is the best way I could put it. Just injury after injury. And ironically, or, unironically, however you want to look at it, it started with a Sean Murphy injury, the oblique on opening day. You're kind of hoping that doesn't repeat. It's a terrible start to where we're at, but it does open up some interesting possibilities, because not bringing in Travis d'Arnaud this year, of course, is going to mean that Sean Murphy's going to take most of the duties behind the plate, and you're probably going to start the season with Chadwick Tromp. Maybe down the road you see a Drake Baldwin come up. So now you kind of expedite that process. You're probably going to have Chadwick Tromp as your opening day starter at catcher, I would assume. And then in backup, you're going to see Drake Baldwin. And the fans, as well as the Braves, are going to have a really early look at Baldwin, and maybe he's already ready to go. Maybe by the time that Sean Murphy's back, he's already established himself enough to be the number 2 guy. Possibly the number 1. I've heard that. I don't think so. I think it'll be Sean Murphy number 1 and Drake number 2 by the end of the season. But I think Drake Baldwin is the reason that we didn't bring Travis d'Arnaud back. That's why the Braves felt that it could be done without that $8 million to d'Arnaud. And we'll have to see how this turns out.
Yeah, the whole offseason with d'Arnaud leaving, it felt like, and this is all speculation, mind you, but it almost felt like it was Alex Anthopoulos doing that thing in Moneyball where Billy Beane trades away the player so that they can't start him every day. And it's like, hey, you can't do a timeshare with Travis d'Arnaud and Sean Murphy, because Travis d'Arnaud's not here. And we heard all the reporting. Sean Murphy's going to start 4 out of every 5 games and things like that. This is a really unfortunate injury. And I kind of want to get your thoughts on some of the options here, right? You have a lot of catchers in camp, some accomplished veterans, and kind of gaming out some of the scenarios. I think you presented the most appealing option to a majority of the fan base, right? Chadwick Tromp, who a lot of these pitchers know. Chris Sale gave him a shout out during the Cy Young acceptance speech. He is counted on to be the guy until Sean Murphy is back. But you have Drake Baldwin. He has a chance to be on the roster on opening day. It's probably somewhat of an even timeshare, depending on what he does offensively, but it gives you an opportunity to look at that. I have my own thoughts on what Anthopoulos might do, but if you have Tromp and Baldwin together on the opening day roster, do you think that Chadwick Tromp should be the de facto starter, or should this be a timeshare, or should Baldwin be playing almost every day so you can get that look as to what his game is?
You bring up Alex Anthopoulos. I saw a lot of Alex Anthopoulos today during Braves Clubhouse.
Hmm.
The majority of the time was spent with one Drake Baldwin. This is early in the morning. As far as I know, this was before anything happened.
Right.
Nothing important being discussed. I wasn't eavesdropping at all, but you just saw him spending a lot of time there.
Hmm.
That doesn't mean anything. I don't want that to, don't take that for what it is.
No, we're clipping this and putting this out on social media immediately.
But he was talking to him, and I think it was more of a "How you feeling?" That kind of a conversation. However, what I would say is this: a good friend of mine is Johnny Estrada, and Johnny always talks about catching comes first, batting does not.
Mhm.
Anything you do at the plate is gravy, but your ability to handle a pitching staff always comes first. And I think that's probably still the case. I don't think that's changed. I think the Braves offense, especially when they eventually do get Ronald Acuna back, will be plenty good with or without Sean Murphy
Mhm.
for the time being. Obviously, you're missing him, but I think they can do without. I mean, we saw how much they could do without last year. We're well aware of that. I think that they're probably going to go with Tromp as the de facto opening day starter because, frankly, it's the safe option. It's the sure option. Like you mentioned, Chris Sale shouted him out in the Cy Young acceptance. It makes the most sense because of what he can do with a pitching staff, because he has uh, big league level experience already. It just makes the most sense, at least. And really, it's 4 to 6 weeks. It's not 6 months, right? It's
Yeah.
it's not a super long tenure. I think he'll be fine in that role. I think Baldwin gets an opportunity to show that he's ready. Now, if Baldwin comes in and tears it up, he has every right to prove his spot. But I think this is more of a come in and prove what you got, and maybe in 6 weeks you're the number two and not Chadwick Tromp. And I think that's what's going to be exciting. We're going to see how Drake Baldwin performs immediately to start this season. I assume, right?
Yeah.
That to me is the most sensible way this goes.
Yeah. And it is important to point out it's 4 to 6 weeks from right now. It's not 4 to 6 weeks from opening day.
Yep.
So it's entirely possible with opening days in about 3 weeks that we're looking at 1 to 3 weeks without Sean Murphy. And then whatever time it takes him, obviously rehab, rehab stints, whatever it might be. Hopefully he's there in Columbus with the Klingstones. You know, you have a chance to catch him a little bit. You've done some great reporting on that, by the way. So
Thank
folks,
you.
go over to um, Braves on Deck with Tyler Redmond on YouTube. Go check out a lot of the Columbus coverage there. Uh, you did touch on something interesting though that I think we've heard Alex Anthopoulos talk about a lot, and it's the note on Estrada and the defense. Drake Baldwin has 75 games behind the plate in AAA in his career. And Anthopoulos has gone on the record multiple times in the offseason. I've clipped some of them. I've put them on social media. I've put them in newsletters. We played them on here about he thinks young catchers should get as much playing time as possible to continue developing. And you can never keep that guy in the high minors for too long. Given the fact that you have some accomplished major league veterans, you have Sandy Leone, you have Kurt Casale in camp, is there a possibility that Atlanta says, hey, we'll go with a Tromp Casale tandem for a couple weeks, especially if it is only 7 to 10 days before Murphy comes back and Drake Baldwin just plays every day in AAA?
Oh, I don't think that's out of the question either. I'm telling you what the fans want to hear, right? That's that
Mhm.
Drake Baldwin will be there the
Yeah.
second game of the year.
Yeah.
That said, I mean, there are other options. That's what spring training is all about. We're figuring out what the rotation's going to be, what the bullpen's going to be, what the lineup's going to be in some regards. And right now, we just have yet another. We got to figure this out and see what the best option is at that time. You brought up the veterans. There is all the possibility in the world because of the heightened focus on defense. Arcia is another good example. They don't worry about his bat because they value what he does defensively
Mhm.
and his price range too. But there's all the reason in the world that they could go with a veteran there because look, it is a huge responsibility to drop on a guy who, like you said, 75 games behind the plate in AAA. That's a huge responsibility to go from that, which in reality he probably should have at least a few months at the AAA level this year before he comes up, no matter how good his offensive numbers are. So look, the Braves traded William Contreras because of his defense. That's where that right. So
Yeah.
to me, I think you could be correct too. I think this could go a lot of different ways. It's all about who shows what over the next 2 to 3 weeks.
Yeah. And I kind of want to get to some of how Alex Anthopoulos has approached this position in the past and approached the question of upside over defense. We'll do that next, right here on Braves Today. Welcome back to Braves Today. Lindsay Crosby joined by Tyler Redmond of Braves on Deck. Really excited to have him here from Northport, giving us another Northport report and talking about Sean Murphy and then how you handle that backup position, right? Uh, Alex has mentioned specifically the struggles the team had in 2021, right? That was a situation you went into the season with Travis d'Arnaud and William Contreras as your two catchers. To your point, we've gotten reports. We haven't gotten names on them, but we've gotten reports that there were Brave starters who didn't want to throw to Contreras. They didn't like his defense. Ultimately, part of the reason he got moved. But Atlanta had to use 7 different pitchers in 2021. And Anthopoulos has jokingly said that he was kind of traumatized by the effort to go out and get additional catchers that season. It was Jonathan Lucroy played 2 games. Kevin Mathis had 3. Alex Jackson had 7. Stephen Vogt had 22. Kevin Smith had like 27. Like it was not just d'Arnaud and Contreras. And so to the point of keeping a veteran, Curt Casali is a guy, he finished last year on a major league roster. He's now on a minor league deal. So he is an XXB free agent under the CBA 5 days before the season starts. If you don't add him to your 40-man roster, he can leave. He can opt for free agency. So it is, I kind of want to caution fans that Alex obviously is thinking about the upside, but he's also thinking about the organizational depth. And if you promote Baldwin to the major league roster, you could potentially lose both Curt Casali and Sandy Leon when the season starts. If he promotes one of those 2 veterans, you keep Baldwin and you have one additional catcher in AAA that you aren't guaranteed to have under any other method. Is thinking about it from that perspective crazy? It's going to be frustrating, right, for the fans. But is that perspective on this crazy, or is that kind of how Anthopoulos has worked in the past?
Well, I think it's how every general manager has to look at it.
Right.
You know, a lot has been said about the starting rotation and where that's going to shake out, right? And not to change the subject, but Ian Anderson. You know, Ian Anderson's probably the top contender because he's out of options,
Yep.
right? So that's not something that the casual fan will necessarily think about, but that is a factor, and it's the factor here too. I don't think if Sean Murphy if Sean Murphy hadn't gotten hurt, I don't even think Casali. I think Casali would probably find himself, you know, out there on the wire or wherever, you know, they may go on another roster, right? So I think this opens up a really interesting opportunity to explore those other options. Either it'll be Casali or it'll be Sandy Leon or it'll be Drake Baldwin. And I think that whatever they choose will be a talking point, right? They're not gonna have a fun time picking. And personally, you know, I would love to see Drake Baldwin.
Okay.
I'd also love to see him in Columbus, you know, so I think that there's a lot of different ways this could go. Personally, though, if I had to pick, obviously I like the Drake Baldwin pick. I would love to
Right.
see a guy like that be given that kind of chance to show that he's worth it. But I would also encourage fans to have caution because I know how the Braves tend to work and they tend to go the safe way. And that's giving the veteran the opportunity because he's got no options left or because you will lose him if you don't use him.
Yeah.
I think as of right now, I know Casali I think he was on the lineup today.
Yeah.
So
He started
they're
today.
going to explore all these options over the next few weeks and they'll make their decision then. If to me, if Baldwin wants to be on the roster, he's got to show offensively and defensively that he can handle it, and that'll be seen over the next few weeks.
Yeah. And I mean, absolutely offensively, in spring, he's been hitting very well, just like he did in AAA last year, like he did at the Futures game. But so much of that, the defense, it's all the little things you mentioned with Estrada, all, it's the framing and the game calling and the running game and all of that we can't really quantify. And to me, quantifying catcher defense and the game calling is kind of that last realm of analytics that they don't really have. I don't want to spend the entire show on catching, but a couple people have asked if there's any possibility the Braves bring in an outside free agent to be the starter. And I don't know about you. I don't want to speak for you. For me, it doesn't really feel like they're going to do that. Your best options are Yasmani Grandal, Yan Gomes, James McCann, aging veterans like 36, 37 that don't really give you anything over the guys you already have in camp in Casali and Leone. And so to me, it feels like this is getting filled from within, especially because it's only supposed to be a couple weeks.
Yeah, I personally don't really see any real reason to do it. Because like you said, it's only going to be a couple of weeks. Unless you get somebody that's just outright better than Sean Murphy. And I would even say outright better than Chadwick Tromp, right?
Yeah.
Because you got to value that. The Braves also don't have a ton of money before they hit the salary cap. That's on the mind. They don't want to spend it where they don't have to. And they have veterans that will be at least good behind the plate. They're sure of that. Or they can take the chance on the prospect. They have too many options for it to make sense to go out and get a starter. I felt the same way, about the rotation a few months back. Like we're losing Morton, we're losing Freed. Strider's coming off of injury. We got to get somebody, right? Like that was where my mentality went immediately. And then as time goes on, it's like, well, Ian Anderson's coming back. Like you go through those waves of thinking, and it's like, do we need it? Like, do we need it? Like, yes, I want to, but do we need it? And I think that's where the decision will come in. And right now, I just don't think that the Braves really need to do it, especially like you said, it's only going to be 2 or 3 weeks after opening day. I don't think they're going to do that. I think, look, Alex Anthopoulos is always on the phone. He's always going to listen to what's out there. But I would be very surprised if they brought in a veteran just to bring in a veteran, if that makes sense, because they have them. Like you said, they have them.
Yeah. They could always add somebody on a minor league deal for Gwinnett, like they did with Leone last year. Leone wasn't, if I remember right, he wasn't signed until Murphy went down on opening day. So that was an emergency guy they threw in Gwinnett just in case. And I'd expect something like that if you can't get both Casali and Leone either on the roster or down to AAA. You touch on Spencer Strider, though, and this injury kind of makes me think about the early going for the Braves. About you're not going to have Ronald Acuna Jr. I've talked on the show before. He told me May 2nd is when he wanted to be back in time to face the Dodgers at home. You're not going to have Spencer Strider on opening day. Now you're not going to have Sean Murphy on opening day. It almost feels like the beginning of the season for Atlanta just needs to be hold course. You've got some couple matchups. You have to face the San Diego on the road. You have to go to the Dodgers on the road. You get the Phillies at home. You have to make a weird road trip to Tampa Bay and then Toronto. Back-to-back days, too. Like they're Sunday in Tampa Bay, Monday in Toronto. But it feels like so much of the early sledding is just get through it, and you're going to have reinforcements coming a month into the season. Is that the right way to think about this, or is the talent on this roster still good enough to go out and be the Atlanta Braves that we know despite having these 3 big holes?
Well, I think last year has made this team so battle tested at this point, like nothing's going to phase them because, I told you I did that piece yesterday on where we started, which is injuries and staying healthy. Of course, a day later, Sean Murphy gets hurt. So I'm knocking on wood for anybody out there.
Please don't do any more of those stories.
I won't do any more, not one more. But
do a story about how we won a Cy Young last year. Let's manifest more of that.
I need Chris Sale to do an interview with me.
There you go.
But there's a lot going on in there, right? Like I spoke with Michael Harris, and his biggest goal this year, stay healthy. Grant Holmes' biggest goal this year, stay healthy. Ozzy's biggest goal, stay healthy. All of their goals is to stay healthy. And I'm hoping that'll be the case. But they know what they did last year with how little that they had, especially at the tail end of the season. they know that that has made them stronger in a way because they know that they can get through it without so much more, right? The fact that you have Austin Riley back, the fact that Ozzy Albies is going to be hitting from both sides of the plate again, the fact that you've brought in Jurix and Profar, I'm not really worried about the lineup. They're going to be fine. I mean, Matt Olson and Austin Riley went back to back yesterday. They're going to be fine. The offense will be what the offense has always been. Especially when they add in Acuna, right? When they get these guys, and when they add in Murphy, they're gonna be more like 2023 than they were 2024 if they can stay healthy. And I think really you want to start the season off strong, but the focus is going to be pitching. It always is.
Mm-hmm.
When does Strider come back? We know he's throwing. He's in Northport. He's here. He's doing baseball activities. They said he's not going to be around for opening day, but I don't know how long after opening day that means. That could mean May 2nd, right? That's what we're hearing with Acuna. It could be a month or two in. It could be a week. We don't really have a timetable. I'm not assuming it'll be a week, but it could be shortly after opening day. That said, they still have a lot there, a lot of depth options. And a lot of people don't like hearing about depth options, but hear me out. They have, Ian Anderson there, who is coming off a year and coming off a full off season, which he hasn't had in a while. And I really think he knows that it's make or break at this point for him. He's well aware of that. A guy like AJ Smith-Shawver, who has been good. He has not been bad. This is not a guy that has been sent down because he's just been outright bad. I mean, this is a guy with playoff experience who's still considered a rookie, I think, in some circles. So, I mean, it's really crazy the way his career has gone. But the reason he's been sent down is either because he's been hurt or somebody comes back from injury. He has an opportunity to show he belongs in that rotation. Grant Holmes, I think, is going to be really good. We've heard Alex Anthopoulos talk about him. I still think he could be used in the pen because when you look at the bullpen right now, you don't have a long relief guy. We just signed Jackson Stevens a couple of days ago. That might play against my point here.
But didn't invite him to camp. Hector Neris got signed and came to camp. So I think that's kind of relevant there for Jackson Stevens.
Yeah. Hector Neris was just signed to the pen. So that might play against my point too. But we have a lot there. I think Grant Holmes, I asked him, yesterday, where are we at? What are we looking at? What are you hearing? Like, are you in the rotation officially? Or are you in the bullpen? Are you just going to float? What's the deal? And he said, I'm going to do whatever they want me to do, right? That I'm going to do whatever the front office wants me to do. By the way, his hair is, I don't understand how it happens. But that said, he's going to do whatever they want him to do. They're stretching him out. He's also, just like Ian Anderson, out of options, I believe.
He is.
So they're going to stretch him out and see kind of where he goes. But if he has any success in the starting rotation, you don't want to douse that with water. If he's hot, let him go. I think the rotation is going to be interesting. I think it's going to be very interesting, especially when Strider comes back, because you got Sale, Reynaldo, Schwellenbach, Ian Anderson, and Grant Holmes. Those are the guys I think you're going to have on opening day. That's going to fluctuate. You got Bryce Elder and AJ down in the minors more than likely that are ready to go and pitching every fifth day. That's important. But it's going to be very interesting. And I think as long as your pitching is sound, everything else will fall into place.
Yeah, and if folks want some more information on the new kick change that Grant Holmes had, you can go back and find our show from Monday, March 3rd. We broke down all what a kick change is, how good it is, and why it's a great addition to his arsenal. I want to talk a little bit more about the rotation and the bullpen and some of these jobs. We'll do that next, right here on Braves Today. Final segment of Braves Today. Lindsay Crosby joined by Tyler Redmond of Braves on Deck. On YouTube, it's youtube.com/Braves on Deck, as well as at Tyler Redmond TV on social media. Coming to us from Northport. Thrilled to have you here. And kind of looking at this pitching staff as a whole, right? Grant Holmes, to me, you mentioned it, feels like the guy who you can trust the most to be your long man, save him when you need a sixth starter and things like that, because the Braves have indicated they're going to use that sixth starter again and give these guys extra rest. It worked so well last year. And anecdotally, a lot of the little nagging injuries that started to come up for some of the veterans, like your Chris Sale, like your Reynaldo Lopez, came up in the second half when Atlanta moved away from the extra rest and started throwing these guys every fifth day. The improvements that AJ Smith-Shawver's made, right? He added a cutter. He looked really good in his first start, struggled a little bit in his second start on Monday. If he were to stick in the rotation on opening day, is that a good thing? Or is it kind of, does it complicate matters because one, you have workload questions for him. And then two, now you have to take either Ian Anderson, who's never pitched in the bullpen in his career, and move him to relief. And you have to, or you have to find a place for Grant Holmes to float back and forth.
It definitely complicates things, but that's not always a bad thing, right?
Yeah.
Like it's a good problem to have. And no matter who the Braves choose, there's going to be a segment of the fan base that says they should have made the other choice, right?
Yeah.
It just is what it is.
That's how it
It
works.
goes with the territory. But that said, I've said from the beginning, really, I think it makes more sense just from a roster breakdown that Grant Holmes go to the minors if anybody does, or to the minors, to the bullpen if anybody does. Because Ian Anderson's never pitched a game in his life in the pen, because he's coming off of injury, routine is the best thing for him. And Grant Holmes is valuable in the bullpen. A lot of people think the bullpen is, kind of second tier, but it's just as important as the starting rotation. And when you have a guy who is dependable out of the pen, who can cover 2 to 3 innings if needed, or a spot start, that is a valuable card to have in your back pocket. And I don't want that to be overlooked. I loved the fact that we could call on him at a moment's notice last year. I thought that was very beneficial to us. It certainly helped us get around a lot of the injuries, not only in the starting rotation, but just injuries, period.
It got us to the postseason. He started game
Absolutely.
162 a day after throwing 30 plus pitches on Sunday. Got Atlanta in the
Well,
postseason.
look, I mean, we went through a year where AJ Minter was out, uh, all kinds of nagging injuries in the pen, the 15-day ILs for Pierce Johnson. And, I did that list the other day, and it'll boggle your mind that the Braves qualified for the playoffs if you look at that.
Yeah.
And he was a fundamental part of getting the pitching staff to the end of the road. I mean, that doesn't happen without Grant Holmes, or at least someone of that ilk, somebody that, like Jackson Stevens did a few years ago, where you could call on him for a couple of innings out of the pen. Not everybody's built like that, and that's okay. But to have one guy in your pen who can do that is immeasurably valuable.
Yeah. I'm torn because Grant Holmes, incredibly valuable in that role last year, right? I had the stats here a second ago. 19 appearances out of the pen, 34 innings, a strikeout an inning. He went almost multiple innings almost every time. But some of the under the hood stuff makes me think that Grant Holmes could legitimately be a mid-rotation caliber starter. But I do agree that you're going to have to figure things out. He's the guy who's shown the most propensity of all of these options to flex back and forth. So you kind of go with that. And then the bullpen construction as a whole is just really interesting to me because everybody wanted the Braves to go out and make a big signing. And reportedly, they were in on Tanner Scott and they couldn't get the deal done. Right.
I wanted that one, by the way.
I did too. If you think about when's the last time the Braves brought in a lefty closer, they won the World Series with Will Smith. So it made sense to kind of, Will Smith's still a free agent, by the way. You can bring in a Will. The Dodgers have shown you have to have a Will Smith on the roster to make the World Series. So just go get the reliever, stick him in Gwinnett. But Atlanta keeps bringing in relievers, right? You brought in Dylan Covey. You brought in Jake Diekman after camp started. You brought in Hector Neris on Monday. Buck Farmer was a signee when camp broke. It really feels like the opening day bullpen might not be the same bullpen that you see 2 or 3 weeks down the line. Is this the place where we're going to see the most shuffling of guys and probably losing some players because so many of them don't have options left?
Absolutely. And really, when you're building a roster, that's kind of how it should be in a way. Like if there's any place where you should have shuffling, it's the pen because it's the most up and down roll. One day you're going to have a clean inning of nothing, and the next day you might give up 3 runs. It's very, hit or miss a lot of times in the pen. So to have shuffling is no surprise. they got to find guys who not only fit the role in the pen on the roster, but also they got to find guys who fit the clubhouse. And
Mhm.
when you're bringing in guys left and right like they're doing, that's part of the equation, no doubt. But it's also, can they perform for us? The additions they're making right now with Hector Neris and Buck Farmer are interesting. I'm not surprised by them though,
Yeah.
because I've been looking at that bullpen list for a long time, and you're losing a guy like AJ Minter, which means your lefties really got to step up. I'm looking at Dylan Lee this year. That's one that I'm looking at going, okay, this is your year, because Dylan Lee, you'll know what I'm talking about. He's had moments where he's been phenomenal, right?
I
And
don't know how he does it. He's throwing
untouchable.
92
But
and
then he gets
nobody can hit
optioned.
it.
But then he
Yeah,
gets optioned because
because he
he
has
has
options.
options.
Yeah.
And it's he has all the potential in the world. With AJ Minter gone, and we all love AJ. I hate he went to the Mets, but that's beside the point.
Mhm.
We all love AJ, but with him gone, Aaron Bummer and Dylan Lee and maybe a Angel Perdomo, right? All of
Yeah.
those guys may have that shot to step up and be the big lefty in the pen, right? So you have those options. I think Angel Perdomo might make the opening day roster regardless of what his stats are, purely because he is a big time lefty. He is coming off Tommy John, and he does have the potential. We've seen it before he was injured. So we'll have to see how it plays out. But Dylan Lee is one I'm circling. I'm circling him, and I hope I get to talk to him tomorrow. I've been, you've been to the clubhouse when you go and you're walking around, you kind of get who's available. You try to,
Mhm.
do you
If,
have
they,
time?
if
Maybe.
guys don't want to talk, they will not make themselves available.
Yeah,
Like,
they sure
you
won't.
can't just
And
talk to whoever you want to. It's whoever wants to talk to you that day. Yeah.
it's who's looking at me going, okay, fine, I'll do it. Right?
Yeah.
It's that. So, you don't want to be. I'm going in there trying to get as many as I can as quick
Right.
as I can. That's kind of my goal. By the way, spoke with Jerks and Profar today. Like him,
Ooh.
good
Uh-huh.
energy, good clubhouse fit. He's from Curacao, grew up loving Andrew Jones. We all
Yeah.
know that. Very good to talk to, and I'm looking forward to watching him play. That said, the bullpen, without a doubt, is going to be the most up and down thing. Pierce
Yeah.
Johnson spoke on that today with me. He spoke about it. He goes, look, we're going to get hurt. It is what it is. People are going to get hurt. It
Yeah.
happens. It sucks, but it happens. And we're going to use a lot of pitchers. So it's not a bad problem to have. You're going to lose some along the way, right? Like if Hector Neris doesn't immediately come in and show that he can, throw and pitch well, that's just one example. I think they'll give
Mhm.
him a little extra rope, but you get my
Probably.
point.
Yeah.
Like, they got to make cuts quick. Jake Diekman was an interesting one. That was one that I was like, "Ooh, okay."
Yeah.
I like that in a way, because I've seen what he did in his career. It was a little surprise, kind of like when they got Jonathan Lucroy a few years ago, right? Like
Mhm.
just okay, there's a name I haven't seen in a while, but a name with some value.
Yeah. Like
And
he was really good up until last year with the Mets.
exactly. So a lot of times when people leave the Mets and come to the Braves, they do great things. I'm looking at Adini Hechavarria. So
There you go.
there's a
Well,
lot of folks out there
flip
that
side of
can do
that,
that.
you've got Luis Guillorme and Joey Wendell. So
Very
like
true. Very
there's
true.
there's give and take on that one.
Very true. Very true. But no, I think the bullpen will be the one that shakes the most, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. I just hope it shakes in a way where we get the best out of the ones that we have, and we see what we need to add going forward. Maybe we do need to make that big time signing in the pen and a long term deal. That's one thing we don't do a lot of when it comes to really pitchers in general,
Yeah.
but especially bullpen.
Yeah, it's like Joe Jimenez, Pierce Johnson are really the only long-term deals that we've signed for relievers recently. Because we traded for Bummer, we traded for Iglesias, and then the only real outside of a 3-year deal for Reynaldo Lopez, it's the Strider extension, and that's really it. And so the fact
Well,
that they offered uh not Clay Holmes, Jeff Hoffman,
yeah,
the rumored offer, what they get offered him in money
couldn't
and in
believe it.
years
I almost don't believe it.
blew my mind. Yeah, because I'm like, it's just so out of character for Alex Anthopoulos on that. And I did a whole show about, is this a changing of his philosophy on this, or was that more of the, we have a fallback of we can throw him in the bullpen if we need to.
Maybe
On
it
the
was
bull
just trying to raise his price. Maybe that's what it
that,
was.
that could have been it. On the bullpen note, I do think it's interesting that Perdomo doesn't have any options, but you can start him on a 30-day injury rehab. And so, like, you look at that, Daysabel is optionable. We're obviously hoping Dylan Lee doesn't get optioned. But Atlanta has the ability to at least temporarily float some of these NRIs who could otherwise opt out, like a Buck Farmer. He's an XXB free agent. He can opt out. I think his reported deal from the AP was $1 million if he makes the roster. So it's possible we see a little bit of manipulation early on the bullpen. I think it's going to be really interesting. What can Braves fans expect from you and from Braves on Deck with Tyler Redmond while you're down there in Northport? What do you have planned for us, both on the TV side and on the show side?
So I'm kind of figuring that out now. And you know this, it's all dependent on what you get at Clubhouse every morning.
Yeah.
Right? We have been here since we came down Saturday. Sunday was our first day at the park. So Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, and we got one more day Wednesday, but it's an off day. So we'll see what we can get just being around the backfields kind of deal. In the morning. I'm trying to, I'm balancing a little bit of, we're covering the big league team, but I'm also trying to get a little bit into the Clingstones and that kind of thing for the news side of things. Right. So we're getting some hometown interviews, some guys. There's a few guys on the Braves minor league roster who are from Columbus or have, spent time in Columbus. Jordan Weems, who was just optioned down to the minors, played at Columbus High School. He's a local guy.
Colton Ingram.
Interviewed him earlier. So, we have some of those that are local guys that we want to talk to, but we also don't want to just come down here and not talk about the big league team too. So for the TV side of things, we're trying to get as much content as we can and go from there. Right. Cause like I told, the powers that be at work, look, I can't promise that I'm going to get an interview with Ronald Acuna, but I might get an Ozzy Albies. Right. Like it kind of goes with just whoever you can get.
Talk to Ozzy about fish or dogs. He'll be there. Yeah. He'll be all over it.
Exactly. So we're still figuring out what we're going to get. And then we're really, ideally, we got content for 3 weeks for TV. That's kind of the goal, right? For to cover the 3 weeks until opening day. For me personally, with Braves on Deck, you're probably not going to see a live stream until I'm back. Luckily from work, I'm off on Thursday, Friday, which it will be well-deserved. But I'm off on Thursday, Friday, and I'm probably going to do some kind of a live stream, just kind of encapsulating the week and hitting some of the biggest moments and really just giving this is where I think we're going, right? This is what I think. And I've been doing that sporadically during the off season of just here's where the roster is. It's going to rapidly change. Here's a way too early, throw it at the wall, see if it sticks, kind of deal. But I think we're going to have a better look after this week. And being down here, being able to talk to guys like Mark Bowman and Gabe Burns, guys that frankly are able to be here every day, that helps because it's, hey, Mark, what are you thinking over here, right? Kind of thing. And being able to be around and see what guys are being used and what guys are being talked to and, that kind of, it just helps get a perspective that, otherwise I'm at home reading what we're all reading, and it helps get inside of it and know it. And I hope to be able to give that perspective and follow it along as we get closer to opening day. Of course, with Sean Murphy, we've taken a drastic turn. Tomorrow, I was already planning on talking to the catchers tomorrow. Now it's like, I need to talk to Chadwick, Tromp, Drake Baldwin, Sandy Leon, and
Kurt
Casale. So it's going to be a big day tomorrow. That will be tomorrow's Tuesday. So tomorrow will be my last real day at camp, and we'll see where we go from there. But if you want to follow along with everything we're doing, check out WRBL.com. Obviously, check out my YouTube out there. But WRBL.com, we're dropping articles, like full-scale articles and that kind of thing as we go along. One piece we did today, Cole Mathis, this is not Braves related, so I apologize.
Okay.
But he's a local kid. He got drafted by the Cubs last year in the second round. His dad was my history teacher in high school, so I've known him since he was in middle school.
Yeah, nice.
He's a good kid. We interviewed him on Zoom. He's in Arizona, and we did a feature piece on him today. So that's one of those local ties, that we're trying to do. But it's been a lot of fun. Check out WRBL.com. My buddy that's with me, I called him my photographer. That's his technical role this week, but he's also a producer. He did a whole article on the history of the ballpark all of the ballparks for spring training for the Braves. So really good stuff, really in-depth stuff that people would probably really get into. But of course, I'll be back on Thursday and Friday trying to put together some YouTube content too.
There you go. It is WRBL.com. Again, WRBL News 3. It is Braves on Deck on YouTube. Braves on Deck with Tyler Redmond. Great work over there. Really interesting topics that a lot of other Braves shows and podcasts don't really cover, right? Whether it's Chief Nakahoma, a lot of stuff on the Columbus Clingstones, things like that. So definitely recommended viewing for all Braves fans. This has been Braves Today for Tuesday, March 4th. To listen on audio, do us a favor, leave us a 5-star review. If you're on YouTube, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell so you know when we drop that next episode. And until next time, this has been Braves Today.